Hi, friends. Welcome back for week 4 of distance learning. Can you believe it's been 4 weeks already? I can't believe it. I've been spending my time baking lots of cupcakes and going on long walks. If you guys want to share how you've been spending your time inside, you can leave a comment below. I'd love to see how you guys have been spending your time. So let's go ahead and get started with this week's lesson. Before we get started, I want to make sure that you have your packet for this week ready. It starts on page 256, and you also have a pencil ready to go. Okay. All right, so this lesson, we are going to be reading some stories, and we're going to be learning about point of view. Now, point of view is what a person's thoughts or feelings are about what's going on in a story. Now, your point of view is what you think about the story in general, or what you think about the characters, the setting, or the events in the story. Your point of view, it's personal, it's yours, right? And it may be different from that of the characters, of the narrator, or of other students. Now, to show this, I kind of want to think about a story that we read in the beginning of the year. Remember the story A Dog's Life? So I'm thinking back to one particular scene where Squirrel and her brother Bone were adopted by this young couple. And at first it seemed really good, but after a while we found out that the couple really wasn't treating them right. And at the end of the scene, it actually showed the couple throwing Bone and Squirrel out the window. Okay, so our point of view about what happened in that part of the story might be different from our narrator Squirrel's point of view. So if we want to think about it, Squirrel was probably feeling really scared and really sad, right? Sad because Bone was getting hurt, but also she was getting hurt. She was living the experience, so her point of view was that she was sad and scared. Now this might be different from our point of view about the story. I remember when we were reading, we weren't necessarily scared because we weren't the ones being thrown out the window, right? We were more so angry. Angry for Squirrel, angry for Bone, and maybe a little bit sad for Bone and Squirrel. But see how our point of view and the narrator's point of view can be different, right? Our thoughts and feelings about a part of the story can be different than the characters. Now, I've been throwing out this word narrator, and I want to make sure we know what that is before we move on. Okay. Remember, our narrator is the person or animal or the character that is telling the story. Okay. The narrator tells the story. So in this case, it's Squirrel. This is different from our author. Our author is the person that wrote the story. In A Dog's Life, her name was Anne M. Martin. She's the one that wrote the story, right? Our narrator in this story was not the same as our author. Remember, Squirrel wasn't sitting down with her doggy paws and writing out the story, right? She was not the narrator, but she was the one telling the story. So I just want to keep that in mind while we move forward. Okay, so let's go ahead and I'm going to share my screen with you guys so that we can all look at this packet together. Okay. All right. So this is our packet for this week. So at the top it says, let's read our learning target together. It says, as you read, determine if your point of view of a story is the same as or different from that of the narrator and the characters. Okay. So let's go ahead and read this read section together. While I'm reading this, I'm going to underline some important things that I find. I'm going to annotate, okay? Read. Characters are the people or animals in a story. Each character has a point of view, okay? Or a feeling about what's happening in the story. The narrator tells the story from the outside and describes the events and actions in the story. So narrator tells it from the outside. Oh my, look at that. We all make mistakes. Let's try that again. So the narrator tells the story from the outside and describes events and actions in the story. The narrator also has a point of view. As you are reading the story, you will have your own point of view. Comparing and contrasting your point of view from the characters and narrator's point of view will help you better understand the text. As you read, ask yourself questions to help you figure out your point of view, such as, who is telling the story? What do the characters think? What do I think? So what I want you guys to do, let's look at the cartoon below. And let's study it to see if we can determine each of the characters' point of view. So it says, do all these people feel the same way about this green bean ice cream? Is Dad's point of view different from the children's? So we look at Dad here and he says, it's my new delicious recipe for green bean ice cream. And he seems pretty happy about it, right? He's excited he's trying something new. Let's look at the, I'm guessing, daughters on the left. We see she's maybe about to try it, and she seems pretty excited about it. She got a smile. And then we have our boy to the right, see how he's feeling about it. So let's go ahead down to page 257. So using what you can see in the cartoon, complete the first row by describing how the girl, the dad, and the boy feel about the green bean ice cream. And in the second row, describe each character's point of view. So we've already have the girl's actions filled out for us. It says she is smiling. She seems to be enjoying the ice cream. And so her point of view, she thinks the ice cream's great. So let's look at the boy's point of view. What do we think? What is the boy doing in this picture? What's the boy doing in that picture? Well, I see him. He doesn't look like he likes it very much, but I see him. He pulls back from the ice cream. And what's that look on his face? He looks disgusted, right? He does not seem to be enjoying this ice cream. Let's go ahead and fill out the dad's actions. So Dad, he says the ice cream looks delicious. And he looks pretty proud of himself for coming up with something so delicious. So let's think about how these actions of these characters affect what their point of view is. So the girl's point of view, she said she thinks the ice cream is great. What about the boy's point of view? So him looking disgusted and pulling back from the ice cream, what do you think that tells us about how he feels about this ice cream? Well, I know that tells us that he does not like the ice cream. I'm just going to write he dislikes the ice cream. What about Dad? So he says the ice cream looks delicious and he's looking proud of himself. How does he feel about this ice cream? He thinks the ice cream is great. All right, so if you guys want, you can pause the screen and go ahead and copy this down into your guided notes. Okay, and hope you've copied that down. Welcome back. So it says, let's talk with each other. I know we can't talk with partners, but let's talk with each other. Let's describe each character's point of view. What is your point of view about how green bean ice cream might taste? Is your point of view the same as or different from the character? So it's important for us to be able to identify the character and the narrator's points of view in a story and to describe how these points of view are the same or different from our own point of view about a story. So in the next section, we're going to be reading a modern fantasy, and we're going to identify the points of view of the narrator and or the story characters and compare them to our own points of view. So let's go ahead and together let's look at page 258. So first we're going to read to understand what the author says, then we're going to read to identify the points of view of the narrator and the characters, and then we're going to compare and contrast those to our own points of views. So let's look at this story. It's called Night Flying Friends, and if we look at that illustration, I see a bat who kind of has like a mischievous look on his face, and then the owl that looks kind of confused. So I think it says friends, maybe these guys are friends. Let's go ahead and pause the video and read this independently and unpause when you're ready to move on to the next page. Okay, so I'm now on page 259. So this says, how is your point of view about the characters in Night Flying Friends different from each character's view of each other? Okay, so number one says, what are Alex and Max's point of view toward each other? And using evidence from the passage, we're going to complete this chart below. So I'm gonna help. I'm gonna model the first part so you guys can do the rest of this chart by yourself. But let's think about, I'm gonna look at Alec and I'm gonna look at his actions and his point of view. So first of all, who's telling this story? I'm gonna reread the first paragraph to find out. So the first paragraph, the first sentence actually says, let's go look at it. It says, last week I was perched peacefully on my favorite branch in a tall oak tree, watching everything with my big owl eyes. So I know that Alec is the owl, and Alec is one of the main characters, right? So because Alec is the narrator, he's the one telling the story, he's describing the characters and the events from his own point of view. So the chart asks me to find text evidence that shows how Alec feels about Max, the other story character who happens to be a bat. The heading says to note Alex's actions, but I'm gonna note anything that Alex says, thinks, or does, as long as it gives me a clue about Alex's point of view toward Max. So at the beginning of the story, Alex said he's sitting on his branch, he's looking at everything. He says he's peacefully perched, right, on his favorite branch. Then Max, this bat, swoops in. Alec has a lot of thoughts about Max, right? He calls the bat a strange creature flying crazily and wonders what's wrong with Max. I'll add those details to my chart because they're going to help me identify Alex's point of view about Max. So let me add those details. So Alex says, let's see, he sits quietly on his favorite branch. Sees a bat flying and then landing near him. Okay, let me make this so that it kind of fits. Okay, now what is Alex's point of view? So at first, right, what we can see from our actions, at first thinks Max is annoying and a little crazy. But what happens towards the end of our story, right? How does Alex's perspective, how does his point of view change throughout the story? So at the end, he actually ends up liking him. He ends up liking Max. Okay. So let's go ahead and do the same thing for Max's actions and Max's point of view. Pause the video and see if you can try that yourself. Okay. So for me, I see for Max, he's flying around and he lands near Alec. He talks about what he's done and he says it was good talking to Alec. So how do we think, what do we think Max's perspective was? What was his point of view on what happened? And how is that different from Alex's perspective? So Max's point of view, he seems to like Alec, right? He never thought that Alec was annoying or crazy, right? He likes him right off the bat. So let's move on to our talk. It says, talk to your partner about Max and Alex's point of view. Are they the same or different, right? We know that they're different. Do they change at the end of the story? So Max's seem pretty consistent. He doesn't seem to change his opinion about Alec, but Alex's point of view changes, right? At first he thinks he's really annoying. Why is this bat disturbing my peaceful perch? And then he actually ends up liking him, okay? Then talk about your point of view about each character. So what do you think about each character? All right, once you're done thinking about that, go down to your short response. It says, what is your point of view about each of the characters? What do you think about them? Is your point of view the same as or different from those of Max and Alec? Support your answer with details from the text. Use the space provided on page 262 to write your answers. Now, just like every other week, if you guys want to share these responses with me, you can send them to my email, and I will put my email in the description box below so you can send those there. I hope this was helpful to you guys. Remember, figuring out the point of view in a story, figuring out what each character thinks about the situation of the story is going to help us get a deeper understanding of what the author is trying to teach us, what the theme is, what the author is trying to share with the world, okay? So I'll see you guys next week. Love you so much. Bye.